I think for me, that was a big thing with the human design was like, it just gave me permission to be like, oh yeah, this is how I make decisions. Like, this is who I am. Like, this is why I feel this way and think this way and act this way. Hey, Anna, thanks so much for coming on. I'm so excited to be able to dive in with you. I know we and I just were chit-chatting, and man, I know this is going to be such a great conversation. So thanks so much for being here.
Renee, I always love being in your energy. Always inspire me to really be who I am. And that's been a huge evolution for me over the last few years. So I'm so excited to get to chat with you today.
Thanks. Well, I'm glad. I know we're going to just dive right on in, but before we do that, can you let people know a little bit about who you are, what you do, who you serve, a little bit about your story?
Sure. So I am the founder of the Spiritual Business Incubator. I'm a human design expert. I'm a business strategist. I'm a mom. I'm a gardener. I am a wife of my high school sweetheart. I am the child of Polish immigrants who came here to follow the American dream. And I have fully embodied that in a lot of ways. And that story seemingly has limited me in a lot of ways. And so everything that I am doing now, personally, professionally, is to rewrite my identity, help others do that, like rewrite what business could look like from what I was taught I should be to what I desire and what I want to call into this world and all of the different ways. So I've had a lot of personal experiences in that. I've had a lot of professional experiences in that. And I can't wait to chat more.
Yeah. So I honestly, like I told you before, but I have had this call to restart this podcast and do this podcast in a very different way. And I put out a little bit of a post call for people that may be interested in coming on. But there were a few people that I specifically reached out to be able to come on and to talk and to chat. And you were one of those. And so thank you for graciously being willing to come on. But I think for me, when I sat there and thought of stories or people that are kind of challenging the status quo, doing things a little bit differently, stepping outside the box, and also seeing these massive transformations, these massive up levels, you were one of the people that came to mind. And I think a big part of it, I just looking back, it was a year ago that you went to the Amplify retreat. Now I'm calling it the Awaken retreat. But prior to that, I think was kind of the start of this evolution of what has become what you've created in this last year. And I've just watched it kind of almost like a catalytic, like this just explosion of what you've done and what you've created and the actions that you've taken and the perceptions of other people that you've let go of, and just really stepping into, somebody recently said something about this main character energy. And I really feel like that is kind of what you've done in this last year of I am the main character of my story, and I am okay being that main character. And not all the time, people love the main character. Some people, there's the villain, the people that are on the opposite side or that disagree with you and all that type of stuff. And so you were one of those people that I thought, I would love to have this conversation and just come on and talk about that. And I know you and I talked about a little bit about our story, kind of the conversation that we're going to bring today is that perceptions and other people's perceptions of us, and maybe even the perceptions that we thought were of our story, and the journey that we're creating. Which honestly, if we look back at it, my perception of my story is probably based on somebody else's perception and belief of what I should be doing and not necessarily my own. And so it's kind of this morphing and this transformation of literally understanding what is it that I want to create versus what is it somebody else has said I need to create. And somebody else's expectations of me. Those two words probably go hand in hand, is perception and expectations of us. So tell us a little bit about kind of what has happened for you, I guess, in this last year, on your end of it, going from this place of letting go of a school board, having a bunch of lawsuit sorts of stuff going on with the school board, to moving to creating a new avenue with your business. Literally, I think everything in your life has changed in the last year. So kind of tell us about if you go back to where you were at that point, and then what do you think shifted for you? What was that thing that made such a huge difference?
So a year ago plus, right, I was still on the train of thought. I was a good student. I wanted to do what my parents wanted of me. I always, was trying to be the best employee, a lot of like other people's roles of me, expectations of me, and I rose to that occasion. I liked fulfilling those roles for them
Mm-hmm.
because I got love, attention,
Mm-hmm.
bonuses, promotions, whatever that looked like. A pluses. Girl loves an A plus over here. And also along that journey, as I entered entrepreneurship and started personal development and all of these different things, I started to recognize that things I had committed to or started shaping my life around didn't feel authentic. And
Mm-hmm.
I do a lot of work in human design. And so starting to understand my own human design and just recognizing when things felt unaligned for me, I didn't know what to do with them for a long time, but just started to have that realization. So to the point that you're talking about where a year ago and I attended your retreat and it was just this like really profound experience. I absolutely believe that. But I was the president of the school board of the school, the best school in our community, and had built up this identity of a professional, of a community member of in a very conservative like town, and this identity of what people expected of me and what my skill set supported, right? I
Mm-hmm.
had the skills to do all of this. But then there was the school was going through a leadership transition. There was like a lot of things coming out that I had uncovered in my role as the school board president. And it was really interesting that people were starting to get mad at me for uncovering these things that didn't feel in integrity, that didn't feel like we're serving the mission of the organization. And I thought I was just doing my job, my role.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly it went from everyone loving what I was doing to hating it because I wasn't willing to just stand idly by and let things happen that felt out of integrity.
Yeah.
And for me, that was like a huge wake up call because even though I was building a business, I have a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old. I'm married to my high school sweetheart. Like I was spending a significant amount of my time and energy in a place that did not make me feel good, that did
Mm-hmm.
not like feel like I was contributing, even though I knew I was, but it was just this like mess. And I remember at that retreat, actually, you had photos taken of us. And when I got the photos back, I was like, this is not me. The way
Mm.
my face looked, the energy that I was
Interesting.
giving off. I was wearing this like blazer, which I still love to like, I'm a business person. I love business, like business casual. I'm like evolving my style.
Yeah.
But when I saw that picture, I was just like, this is the role, the person that I'm playing, but it is not who I feel like I am in my heart anymore.
So good.
And when I had that realization and like the retreat itself, like absolutely was a part of it. I remember through some of the breathwork sessions, one of the biggest breakthroughs for me, there was a lot around my voice, if you remember, and like speaking the things that I believed and not getting in trouble for them, because that not only is an experience I've had as someone who like likes to challenge the status quo, as a trailblazer, all of the things, but also that's in my human design. And so I had a lot of negative associations with speaking my truth and living into what I really believed.
Mm-hmm.
And so that whole time that we were at the retreat, it was just like something had shaken awake in me. And I realized that the actions that I was taking, the person that I was playing on the outside, was very much designed by someone else and what someone else thought I should be doing. And this has been my whole life, actually. And I always worked really hard so I could do everything everyone else wanted and be everything they wanted to be, and then also try to do the things that I wanted to do, but didn't have as much energy for. I wasn't
Yeah.
showing up as like with that full like presence essence in the things that I actually loved. And then
Mm-hmm.
at that point, my relationship with my husband of 20 years was struggling because I was not being present. My kids were like, I'm crying, trying to put them to bed because I was so stressed and my body was holding on to all of these things. And so somewhere in that, around the retreat, around like making these decisions, I had to like look at myself and say, is this the direction that I want to go? There was
Mm-hmm.
expectations of me continuing on the school board. There was like expectations of who I was going to be in this community. And I was being drawn not only to a different world, but to a different version of myself, which now the more and more I understand it, it's my actual authentic self that's coming out. but she was so hidden and
Yeah.
so repressed that I just was like kind of in this like limbo of not sure where I was going to go next. So
Mm.
when you talked about like the catalyst moment, there was a moment somewhere around the retreat and after the retreat. It was this very like big declaration.
Mm-hmm.
I declare like that I am going to live the life that I desire, create the business that I desire. And let's be very real here. This declaration was written, and then I remember I recorded it on my podcast where I like was shaken in my
Yeah.
boots, even speaking it out loud. And also I could feel this like energetic shift. I didn't know how I was going to achieve it all. I didn't know like all of the answers yet, which my very type A personality wanted the plan for it. But my like heart and soul and being, like I was like, am I literally being an example to my kids, to my family, to myself that this is what life should look like?
Mm-hmm.
So I made this declaration. I mean, in my house to myself, and then on my podcast, and started telling more and more people. And what's really interesting is when I declared that I was going to do this thing for myself, people also didn't like that.
Mm-hmm.
The school board didn't like that, even though we were going through this chaos, right? They didn't like that. Even my husband was like, "This seems crazy. Like you're splitting your energy in all these different places." I'm like, "No, I'm redirecting my energy." Friends of mine, even close friends, like people, and some of the content and feedback that I got was just like, what is happening? It's like a light switch turned on. I sometimes like to think it's like that dimmer switch, but there was a
Yeah.
pretty significant like jump in the switch that me just it was like the wake up call. It was the moment that
Mm-hmm.
I knew things needed to change. And because I so deeply believe in human design, for me, I'm a sacral authority using my sacral, which is something that when I had like totally cut off from once upon a time. And so I've loved learning from you of like reconnecting with my feminine essence also. But I had this like hit, the sacral hit to go to an event in Denver. So it was right after the retreat a few weeks. And when I went there, it was like for the first time in a really long time, I saw a large scale community of people, and this particular is a women's community that looked like me, like not just looked
Mm-hmm.
like me, but like entrepreneur, spiritual, like exploring whatever all the worlds look like, being really heart centered and driven. And I got that online. I got that in some other communities, like at your retreat, but like where I lived, it was not that.
Yeah.
And when I went to that event, I remember I had been dreaming of a business idea, of an evolution of my business for a really, really long time that I had been repressing, hiding, because of the community that I live in. And after during your retreat and then going to that event, like I started to speak it out a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And people were like, this is an amazing idea. And I was like, this, I like obsessively dream about this, but I'm not doing anything about it. So I came back from that event, and that was right after my declaration. I was just like, okay, let's build the thing. And things started to line up, things started to come together. And like, spoiler alert, my family is now moving to Denver. So I live 4 hours west of Denver now. Like, my entire life, like you said, has changed because I started to not only create externally what I desired and what I believed and what I thought the world needed, but I really allowed myself to start seeing myself as a unique individual with unique gifts, and like not just intellectualize that, but embody it and trust that the people that were meant for me were going to support me, were going to be on the journey, and the ones that were not as supportive either were going to come along because they loved me or were going to fall off because we weren't meant to be together.
Yeah. Okay. There's so much. I'm like, I had so many ideas and so many things, but what's fascinating for me is I feel like I kind of went through a similar ish journey this last year, that the realization of how much I was living for the accolades and how much I was living for the recognition, how much I was living for other people's things. And I had a very like last spring, like this time of year, I was like on a high. I was feeling so good. I was running really high. I sold out the retreat. I got to go on a retreat with my coach, James Wedmore, like a small, really intimate retreat. There was only, I think, 8 or 10 of us there. So I was like, got to go do that. And then shortly after that, I had these other, like, I just had all of these like amazing things that were major highs. And then probably around June, I hit a catalytic low, or like abysmal low. That's catalytic's not the right word. Abysmal low, and stayed in that low probably from like June to August and a little past August. And I couldn't quite figure out why. Like, I couldn't figure out why I was feeling so low and why things sucked so bad. And I remember telling my sister, I was like, I don't even want somebody to get me out of this funk right now. I think I just need to feel it. I just need to be in this miserable, really low state for a while. Like, I need to be here and I need to learn whatever I need to learn from this. But one of the things that really came up for me, probably not even then, I probably didn't even realize it until later in the fall of this last year, was that idea of like how much I put so much worth in my business on like the outside, like the perceptions of what other people saw, rather while on the inside, I felt like this shame, felt this, what people were seeing and perceiving of me was not what I was feeling inside. So it's almost kind of the opposite of you, I think, in the sense of what you are sharing is like, I have this burning passion and this burning desire inside of me, and I've got to get this out in the world. And what are people going to perceive of that? Versus mine was the opposite. I felt like so many people saw me as this like amazing, successful, achieved all these really great things, but inside I didn't feel that way. I felt the opposite of that. And I think that there was that incongruence there. And so I think that idea and that topic of like perceptions of like what other people perceive of us and what we perceive of ourselves, and that incongruence creates such a tense moment there too. And yeah, it's been this like for me, this literally like shedding and letting go of so much this last year, but on the opposite end of what, like how your story is like, you know, this like version of me had to evolve and come out. And yet for me, it was more of like the version of me who I was had to die. Does that make
Mm,
sense? Like it's completely opposite, but yet all of it, like both of our stories here, like this story of driven by the accolades, driven by the success, driven by the ladder climb, the perceptions of what other people perceived of us. And it's almost like this marrying and merging of how the world sees us and also who we believe we are. That I think maybe is what really creates that authentic self. Like when we are fully allowing ourselves to fully express who we are and to be who we are, whether it's not what the world sees of us and like we feel like we're less than that, or if it's the opposite, but like it's the coming to realization that we are this person and this is who we are, and allowing the world to really see that.
you know, it's interesting while you were talking, because I feel like I very much went through a dark night of the soul in the fall, a lot of old identity shedding. And I thought it was old identity shedding, and I'm sure it was, but it was like starting to believe that the person that I intellectually saw myself as, that even internally I wanted to be,
Mm-hmm.
that it was okay to be that person and own it. And I remember, you know, you talked about like main character energy and how like the extreme change and growth and expansion of what I've built in my business. I remember the first time I posted something, not only in the new branding, but really from my perception of how human design and business looks like. I had hired a manifestor, I'm a generator, to help me with some content creation and things like that. And she just like hit send and like posted the thing, and I freaked out because I don't teach human design from the perspective of like the traditional way. I really interpret it differently. And you talk about challenging the status quo, and I have a different interpretation. Like at its root, it's the same, but from a different lens.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh my gosh, are they, right? The
Yeah.
powers that be in the human design land going to come and like shut me down because I have a different view of how this is implemented in the world of business.
Mm-hmm.
And what was really fascinating, I'm designed for that, right? Like
Yeah.
it is absolutely part of my human design to do this. But I was so stuck in that needing someone else to tell me I was right or okay, or that who I was being, what I was saying was valuable, that when I started to show up as that, even the first time myself, I probably wouldn't have hit that send button or overthought it or whatever. And it was by far the best piece of content that I had created probably for the last 18 months. And people started to just be like, oh my gosh, wow, you think differently. I was like, no, I always think about this. Now I'm just actually communicating it and being
Mhm.
it out there.
Mhm.
So I just want to share for anyone who's listening that like it was hard to take those first steps. And also on the journey of that we were talking about, like shedding old identities or like evolving into our new identities and all of that, I really remember a tremendous amount of fear when I, right, like we're creating content and we're doing business and all of this, but I feel like my heart and soul are in what I'm creating now. And it felt so vulnerable
Yeah.
to show myself in this way because I had for so long been showing up as someone else.
Yeah, I mean, I think of that even too, like the perceptions. It's funny, we in online business, like put ourselves out there on the internet, and there's this perception of who we are. And then there's also like the way other people are going to perceive us. And yet at the same time, it's the freaking internet. Right? People say nasty things all the time and people feel so anonymous. Like sometimes I actually lately, especially now where there's like so many controversial posts out there around politics and what's happening politically, that I'll sometimes just go to a post just to read through the comments. And I probably shouldn't because it sends me into a little spiral, but sometimes it makes me feel really good to see, wow, this is what people feel like their life is worth doing, is just sitting here trolling and commenting and having these arguments back and forth on the internet that really are not going to do any good, right? But those are the people we're holding ourselves back from putting our fullest self out for because we're worried about what those trolls are going to say, or we're worried about actually, I think a lot of us, myself in particular, it's more of, and I know you talked about this too at the beginning, was like the perception of those maybe even the closest to us. I think sometimes that's the harder one for a lot of us. Like I know there's still like plenty of people in my family that I don't ever talk about my business with. And when people will ask me about business, like even just recently, somebody in my family asked me, like, so it looks like your business is doing really well. How are things going? And I'm like, oh, it's good. Like, I just don't want to talk about it. Right. It's this weird thing of like, how are they going to perceive what I'm doing and what I'm creating? And so rather than be willing to even talk about it or let them in on it or let them be a part of that world, I just keep that world so separate. Like, this is my world. This is my world of business owners. This is my world of serving my clients. This is my world of podcasting. And then over here is this world of me as a NICU therapist and me as a family member and me as whatever. And I don't usually let them cross paths. Like I keep them so separate. And it's interesting. Like over the years, I've gotten more like when I launched my book, right? The people in the NICU were like, oh my gosh, you launched a book? That's crazy. Like, tell me, like, they wanted to be a part of it. But yet I had this perception that I have to keep them separate. Or I don't know. It's just fascinating to see how we let perceptions really impact the way we show up and how we interact. I don't think I was aware of it. Like, honestly, the one of me recognizing how much I was striving for other people's recognition and like the accolades, right? Like, I was looking for recognition from other people in my business group, my coach, my mentors. Like, I was striving so much to be seen and recognized in that space, even if it meant things weren't great on the inside of my business, or that I was suffering, or that things were going really crappy, or I wasn't feeling really great, or I was filled with all this shame or this disassociation between who I was and who the world was seeing me as, and all these things. Like, but it was such a huge wake up call for me when I realized, oh my gosh, all of this, the way I'm acting, the way I'm showing up is so that so and so sees me as this. And yet that's not really who I am in the first place. Like, anyway.
Well, I have a really like good addition to this on my own, what's happening in my own life, right? I
Mm-hmm.
gave the spoiler of we're moving to Denver. And it's actually something that I have been desiring to do, because move out of my hometown, or that where I live now, for years, years and years and years. And it's something that like I kind of casually mentioned here or there, and it got dismissed by my family and like certain people in my community, of like, why would you want to do that? And in like the very recent like few weeks from this recording, I had told my mom and my siblings that we had made this decision and we're starting to take action forward from it. And you were sharing a lot about, right, like all these perceptions that other people have. I'm living the actual reality of the perceptions that I was afraid of people saying to me are being said to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not just like fear, it's reality. And I think that fear comes from having had experiences in the past, either personally or collectively or whatever, where we've done something a little different, or we've done, showed up in a way that is different than what people expect of us, and have had, maybe it's little jabs, little comments, things that like undermine our ability to trust ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so coming into this move and the like expansion that's happening in my life and business this year, I had to really ground into this vision before I had those conversations, because not only was I afraid of what my family was going to say, they did then say that.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to show up as a leader, as a confident person, as a mother, as a business owner, as all the things that, like, I hear you and I hear your concerns, and this may not be the life that you would choose for yourself, even as far as like choose for my kids,
Yeah.
but that if I didn't pursue this, I would regret it. I would not be happy in that. In my perception of myself, is not the life I wanted to model for my kids, and not the impact that I wanted to make by staying in a place that I felt constricted. And so to your point of, right, like we're doing these things because of, or maybe hiding parts of ourselves. I very much did that for a long, long time. And over the course of the last year, I mean, there's been so many iterations of like doing small like releases is almost what I'm saying. Like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, here's a little piece that I'm going to let people see of me, or a little piece here. And I've done the biggest ones of that, I would say, in the last few months. And there's been a lot of like needing to regulate my nervous system, work through
Mm-hmm.
emotions, like make peace with the things that are being said about me to me by people who I love and that I know are doing it out of love and care and concern, knowing that their journey and path is very different than mine.
Yeah.
And so I had to get really clear and confident and grounded in who I am and what my vision is, because it's so easy to get swayed when all of those other things start showing up.
Totally. Yeah. It is. It's easy to like let those fears and let those thoughts and let those things crowd back in. And I love that you kind of talked on the nervous system regulation too, because it was actually interesting. I was at a spa recently and I was walking by and I heard some girls go, "Oh, yeah, like my nervous system totally can't handle that." And I was like, well, one, as an OT, I love the fact that nervous system regulation has become so mainstream and like talked about so much. I also think it's going to become much more of the way of the future. And I talk about this all the time. It's like a whole nother topic podcast around how our generation and the generation coming after us needs nervous system regulation tools, unlike any generation before us. We're just living in a faster pace. Things are going, things are busier, the demands are higher. All of these things, our nervous systems cannot handle it. And we used to spend, we were talking about this the other day, like people that like sat on the front porch in their rocking chair. It was like those were things that our generation is not doing. We're not doing that to help regulate ourselves now. So it's like one of those things, as we step into these new perceptions and as we become more vulnerable and as we allow ourselves to shape and change our identities, like how do we make sure that we're not stressing our bodies out and stressing everything out and allowing that to happen like seamlessly, which is why I love the breath work. I love doing that with my clients and at the retreat and stuff like that. And it also creates such of these like massive transformations just in the breath work, but like calming at the same time. So I know we've talked about so much, and you and I could probably keep talking for literally forever. Where can people find you if they want to? And maybe we do just have another podcast conversation at some point. But if people want to connect with you and hear more about your journey, more about your story, more about human design, because I know you've done human design for me and a lot of my clients as well, in terms of like helping people really understand who they are, how they make decisions, how do they really step in, what is that authentic self? Like, I think for me, that was a big thing with the human design, was like, it just gave me permission to be like, oh yeah, this is how I make decisions. Like, this is who I am. Like, this is why I feel this way and think this way and act this way. And rather than trying to conform myself to fit into somebody else's box, it kind of gave a little bit more freedom to be like, oh, that person over there can act like that totally fine, but that's not how I am, and that's what I normally feel. I think it was a lot of reassurance of like, this is how I feel and how I felt. And now I've like, there's a reason and there's an understanding behind why that is. And so it kind of gave a little bit more permission to lean into that. For those that are interested in that, want to learn more about you, where can they find you?
I spend some time on Instagram is my primary social media platform at the moment. And then I also have a podcast. It's called Design and Align Your Business. So if you're an entrepreneur, that is a great way to explore how human design plays into your business. We're going to have Renee on the show here in the next few weeks or so. So that'll be exciting. And the one thing that you said that's so important, right? That permission or validation of who you are. I always say that my goal with what I do is to help bring conscious awareness to the things that are you, are uniquely special and yours. So you can just lean into that more.
Yeah. So good. Thank you so much for coming on and talking with us and sharing. It's been good. And like I said, I think we probably could have kept talking and like we could have gone deeper, and maybe I need to start scheduling these podcast recordings a little bit longer because these conversations they're just, I think they're going to go deeper. They're going to have more depth. So thank you.
Thank you.